All right, welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the June 8th, 2021 meeting of the Johnson City Regional Planning Commission. If you are here to speak during the public hearing portion of an agenda item, please wait until the public hearing has been opened. Once it has been opened, one person at a time will come to the podium to be recognized. Please speak clearly into the microphone and begin by giving your name and address. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes to speak for or against the item. We now call the meeting to order. Time is pretty close to 6 o'clock. And I'd like to begin by asking if we have any guests in the audience, scouts or anything. All right. With that being said, we will begin with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and I'm going to ask if Vice Chairman Cooper would be so kind to lead us.
Please join me. Dear Lord, fill us all with the grace to make honest and fair decisions tonight in the best interest of not only we as individuals, but also our community at large. And most importantly, all respect each other's opinions and perspectives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Our next item is the approval of the agenda. The agenda has been distributed. Are there any changes?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
The only thing we would ask, and no need to change it if the commission doesn't want to, but we try to set it up based on what we believe might be based on attendance. And so I'm not sure tonight who is here for which items. And so
We could poll everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that being said, before we approve it, if I could just see a show of hands, if I might, if anybody is here for a specific item. If anybody is here with interest in the Stone Gables subdivision? Okay. How about rezoning on East Mountcastle Drive? Okay. Mayflower Road? Claude Simmons? And Cottages at Cedar Rock. Okay, so it looks like we have the most people here for Claude Simmons. Would anybody like to propose we move that one to the top of the new business?
I propose we move that to the top of new business.
I'll second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to move the item, which was agenda item 6.5 up to 6.1. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now, and I think that'll suffice for a approval of the agenda as well. All right, the next item is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. That was the May 11th, 2021 meeting, and were there any changes, deletions, corrections? If not, I'm looking for a motion for approval of those.
Motion for approval?
Second.
All right, we have a motion for approval and a second. Again, is it?
Madam Chair, I will have to refrain from voting. I was not here.
Okay. All right. All of those who are in favor of approval?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right. We are on to item number 5 then. That is the old business, and this is a zoning text amendment dealing with substance abuse treatment facilities. And I'm going to turn it over to staff for presentation, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commission. This was brought to you at the May 11th meeting, and I will spare you from another full presentation. Just want to give you a couple of updates on this. Number one, the genesis of this rezoning really comes from a legal consideration and a legal concern expressed by the city attorney, that being potential for ADA violation of the way that our current substance abuse treatment facility language is drafted and adopted. Right now, the way that we handle these types of facilities, which technically are called MATs, or medication-assisted treatment facilities, as defined by the state, we call them out separately in our zoning code, and then then they are subject to different standards and a different procedure than another more conventional medical office or medical clinic. And that applying special standards and applying a more stringent procedure to that particular use is potentially what violates federal ADA law. And so the city thus far has not, there have been no lawsuits on this, but we certainly don't want to go through that. To date, I believe, and this predates my arrival with the city, but there's only been one special exception where one of these was granted approval over on Broadway. What we have done is we have essentially studied all of the rules and the definitions that have been provided to the public through the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, and modified our language, repealed language that is unnecessary or is considered litigious, and then modified our definitions so that they are consistent with state definitions, and then also modified our zoning standards to allow these MATs to be part of a conventional medical clinic. So looking through the information that was provided to you, really the clinic, the definition of clinic this is kind of the meat of the entire conversation. And that is our proposed change is that a clinic will mean a non-institutional facility in an office environment of solo or group practice, providing outpatient surgical, variety of different services. Urgent care facilities are also included. Now, the last part of this is really the important part where we have borrowed straight from the state. And that is that clinics may include what are called, quote, non-residential office-based opiate treatment facilities, or OBOTs. Now, at the May 11th meeting, we had received information before the meeting that there were two different types of OBOTs. There's an OBOT and an OBOT plus. The OBOT is the more traditional type of Suboxone or Subutex facility where a prescription is written and then someone takes that prescription and goes and gets it filled. The OBOT plus dispenses on site. And so there was some confusion on staff's part as to how does that differ from a methadone clinic which also dispenses on site. And the state treats methadone clinics differently than they do the Subutex or the Suboxone clinics. So what we did was we reached out to, and I'm going to go back up here to my agenda summary because I forgot his exact name here, Dr. Wesley Gimmon, who is the Chief Pharmacist and State Opioid Treatment Authority for Tennessee Department of Health. He was out of Nashville. Great guy, and provided a ton of information. He indicated that the OBOT plus rule is a new rule where this is something new that they would be able to dispense, but that no one in the state is actually doing that yet. No one has received this certification or this license. But if and when they do, they need to be treated the same as a conventional OBOT, whether they're dispensing or whether they're prescribing. This type of MAT or medication-assisted treatment should be provided in an office-based environment, and that levels the playing field. This type of treatment should be considered the same as other types of medical treatment, and so that's what we propose. Again, this is an effort to clean up our language, modernize the text, and also bring our definitions and other standards in line with the state. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
I have a question for you, if you don't mind. When I read through and I look at all of the items that you all striked based on what was there before, it looks to me like 613.3, 617.3, 619.3, 623.3, and 627.3 all begin with the following shall be
Yeah, I saw
permitted
that as
under
well.
special use with the BZA, but then everything below it has been striked.
Right.
So does it make sense to leave those sections in? And if you leave those sections in, should we at least strike the sentence saying the following uses are permitted when there are no possible permitted uses?
No, we looked at that. That sentence is a header sentence, and there are other uses that may have a special exception.
Okay.
And so what we are doing is, I'm just providing to you the header sentence, but we're only striking the language addressing substance abuse treatment facilities. There are other
permitted uses
that
that
are
are just not
required to go
listed.
through an
Okay.
SE.
Thank you.
Correct, yeah.
Thanks for
No, that was a good question.
clarification.
Preston, what is driving that? Is that driven by the state code, or is that our decision here locally to not allow those in those particular districts?
It's not that we are not proposing to not allow them. I hope I said that right. That was a double negative. We are proposing that these types of MATs would be permitted in any conventional medical office.
Okay, so,
So wherever you can have a medical clinic or a
right.
a doctor's office, you can have an MAT.
got you.
Preston, excuse me, Mr. Mitchell, are there any requirements for the Suboxone dispensing clinics to have a physician on site when that takes place?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, in fact, those rules, and it is, we actually built it into the definition, quoting the exact rule from Tennessee, from the Department of Mental Health. Right here it is, non-residential office-based opiate treatment facility with dispensing, which is an OBOT plus, as defined by Rule 0940-0536. I realize that's getting way into the weeds. But that rule, number 36, is roughly, oh goodness gracious, I haven't pulled it up in several days, but it was around 60 pages. And it is extensive and does require that, just like any other conventional medical office, a physician has to run that office, a physician or physicians, yes.
Some question about whether they're on site or not, or if they've,
I think that's
You may
been
know.
clamped down upon
Good.
in the recent
Good.
trends, so.
So my follow-up question is, with these text amendment changes, does it change the enforcement requirements of the city?
It does. It doesn't lessen the city's enforcement capabilities. It simply transfers that enforcement to the state, where it really should belong. And so, because the state already has extensive rules and regulations in place, ours were just simply on top of that. And those extra standards and that extra procedure through the SE was what potentially violates ADA. And so, no, it is not the city of Johnson City deciding that we have no desire to regulate medication-assisted treatment. It's all about the fact that the state's already doing that and doing it rigorously.
Are there other questions of staff at this time? All right, then like to go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this agenda item, either for or against? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to open it for discussion amongst commissioners. I want to start by maybe asking Commissioner Brock, Given the opposition that you all saw with the approval of the clinic in Gray, how do you think, is this going to be beneficial, or do you think this is going to, I mean, I think this is a good thing. I think we do need to comply with the ADA standards. I think that we were possibly opening ourselves up to unnecessary litigation, and so this helps the city, but I'm just wondering if you look at your crystal ball and.
I can't. I think from our experience with both the methadone and Suboxone clinics, and if they're administered properly under a medical model, then it's helpful for individuals who need that kind of assistance and hopefully then wean off of that assistance. I think the important thing that our citizens want is to make sure they're regulated, that there is an oversight body, and there for a long time, the Suboxone clinics were less than the methadone clinic. So I'm really kind of getting updated to know that additional regulations now is in place for Suboxone. That's good.
That's correct. Yep.
Right, good. I didn't answer your question, but.
But it sounds like,
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like at least there's a little more teeth in it that you
Mhm.
all can address, where the state now is taking
Correct.
over that, and it's not really something that the city is trying to say.
That's correct, because we really had no authority at all,
Right.
you know, with the exception of zonings and things of that nature.
Right, right. Is there additional comment amongst commissioners?
If I could just add, for you all or for anyone from the public, I put a link in your summary. And so if anyone ever wanted, they can go to the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. And under substance abuse, you'll see there's a drop down for MATs, medication assisted treatment. And you'll see these are the 3 different types of treatment that they address. And under the first, which is, I always get this name wrong, somebody. Buprenorphine, thank you. You'll see the different rules. And so I will click on, just to hopefully address part of the question from Commissioner Brock. This is Rule 36, right? So I might have looked at something else that was longer, but this one's about 11 pages. And this goes through in great detail all of the requirements that must be in place for them to open up this type of facility. And it does include the requirement that a physician be on site. So this is all public. Anybody could get that if you just go to the Department of Mental Health website.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I think Bob and I were on the commission when the Gray thing came into play, and I was opposed to it because it was right next to a neighborhood. Have we had any instances of impacts there? If not, I think this is a worthwhile direction.
We have not. So many of the concerns that were expressed during that time have not materialized
Good.
associated with that clinic. I mean, you hardly know it's there, quite
Right,
honestly.
yeah.
Yeah, there's no
I've been
traffic
by there
issues.
a lot of
There's-
times, and I've noticed no problems.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion for approval of the zoning text amendment for the substance abuse treatment facilities as provided by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Do I need to restate that, or you got it? Okay. Is there any additional discussion on the motion? All right, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Brock,
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cooper,
Yes.
Chairwoman Wild.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Okay. All right, moving on to new business, and we have reordered our agenda. So our new item 6.1 is going to be rezoning number 1076 at 519 Claude Simmons Road.
Good evening. So the rezoning before you tonight is, I can't move this, I'll come back over. So the rezoning before you tonight is on Claude Simmons Road. That would be just beside Alexander, I just lost, Alexander
Alexander's
Grove. Alexander's Grove. And you see it in the yellow area. they would like to go to A1, which is an agricultural use. Now, it's been a while, I imagine, since we have rezoned anything to an agricultural use. Normally, it's the opposite. So, I supplied you, because this is some very tiny font, and I apologize to the audience, but I supplied you with with this slide so that you would be able to see it. It's underneath your agenda. Just so that you understand what would be allowed in agriculture, because that is something that we talked about at different points. But essentially what the Sturgills would like to do is to build their home. They want to put a single-family residence on it. They actually have a permit for that. And then they would like to use the rest of it for pasture lands, which would include horses and cows. Historically, at least the cows have been there, but not currently. They've been taken off, but at some point that had happened. And we heard last night that they also have purchased this part back here. So their whole property would expand to about 70 acres, but that would be located in the county. Now, again, we haven't rezoned anything agricultural in a while. So these are a list of the permitted uses, as well as anything that would require a special exception. And for the audience, that would also require approval by the Board of Zoning Appeals. So it's not just one staff-approved process. One of the reasons that this could possibly go back to agriculture is because it's located very, in close proximity to our urban service boundary, as well as is adjacent to land zoned in the county. So the urban service boundary is this boundary here in red. This has been before you at some point, known as Bent Oaks. I believe it came for preliminary plat approval. I think the dates it came before you might be a little bit different, but that's in our city view system when they were approved. And then most recently, it was annexed in March of 19. So that is why taking it back to the county it doesn't meet the threshold for de-annexation. So an agricultural use is probably more appropriate for what he's looking to do.
Ms. Hodges,
Yes.
on March 14th
14th,
of 2019, what was the county zoning at that time?
I do not know. I do not know the answer to that question.
It's probably a good chance it was agriculture,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Do the Sturgills know? I mean, it was agriculture, right? Okay.
I believe on that day, we accepted the annexation, we rezoned, and we looked at a preliminary plat.
Right.
that
Right.
night as well.
It was going to become an
It did come
extension
from-
of Alexander's
it did come
Grove,
from
basically.
agriculture.
Right. But the Sturgills did not own it at that time?
No.
Correct.
Mr. Naduku, I believe owned it at that time, and I may have not gotten that last name completely right. But just to give you an idea of what the county zoning looks like, this is a county zoning map where A1 is predominantly around it. A2, it's a shade off of greens. It might be hard to see on the screen. Is at Claude Simmons. It's a smaller, the smaller pieces right here.
Go back to that again. I want to make sure I understand what I'm looking at.
Tiny little triangle, if you continue those two dotted lines, are A2, and the donor hole is A2.
Okay, thank you.
So the brighter green is
A1.
presently what zone?
A1, and that's Washington County.
Okay.
So it would be compatible with 1, 2, kind of 3 sides of the property,
Correct.
2.5.
Because this is the slide I always put in. This is the current land use map and the future land use map. This is because this does go to our urban service boundary, we are looking for residential out here. Went out to the site today to take some pictures, drove in to show you what those barns look like. The applicant is here and will speak to what they intend to do with the property. A neighborhood meeting was held last night. and I believe it was 6 residents from Strawberry Fields, and Dr. Sturgill were here, and he explained his request. There are neighbors here to speak their concerns, but a lot of what happened at the neighborhood meeting was just asking questions about what was going to happen. There was a lot of discussion around the cleanup that has currently happened on Claude Simmons Road and what's being able to be seen from the road, and then what their proposed uses and maybe future uses would look like. And then one resident did voice concerns about noxious uses of the list of agricultural potential. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning request because of its proximity to the edge of where our urban service area is. There are bridge plan policies that are up there that also would support this request. And I am available for questions.
Such as what, you have approval with conditions. Are there specific conditions that staff is recommending approval?
So the conditions, oh yes, I need to explain the conditions. It's in your staff report. So normally you would see, because this is adjacent to residential, anytime there is a rezoning adjacent to residential, a concept plan is required. And with this concept plan, their conditions are that they would like any of the uses allowed in the A1 district. So that is their condition. Just needed to, it needed to make that part known.
And did you also say we'll have to go before the BZA?
If those conditions that would require special exception, those would have to go towards the BZA. Not all of them would, but just the ones that require special exception.
Ms. Hodges, it says staff accepted a text-based concept plan. Can you share any more
Yes.
details of that?
That's what I was talking about.
Okay.
We discussed that it would be text-based instead of plan-based. Oftentimes, you get a plan that says this is where all of the things are going to go. And this is a bit of a different issue because that's asking for a larger time horizon of a family activity. So they would like the options to basically anything that's under that would be appropriate for A1 to be there.
I don't know if you know the answer, but since this is surrounded by A1 and A2 zoning in the county, what is the difference between Johnson City A1 zoning regulations and those in the county? Is there anything particular?
Gives you the opportunity to prep me for that question. Yes, I do.
Thank you.
And I want to first say, I do not administer the ordinance in Washington County. So this is a very quick assessment of what the differences would be. In the county, and I'm going to go back to that map. So any of the, and I'm going to focus on the bright green areas because the A2, it looks like it's really meant for suburban development, and that seems to be its intent. The intent of this district is to, it says, to provide space for agriculture and agricultural-oriented uses and structures, which are an important part of the economy of Washington County. So the ones that are different that are allowed, everything else that you saw on your sheet,
Right.
that those all would also be allowed in Washington County. You can have a general store, restaurant, feed mill, farm, supply store, greenhouses, and commercial nurseries, service stations with a couple of provisions, mobile homes, and I don't believe that's allowed in our zoning district, animal hospitals and veterinary offices, a landing strip. The rest of them, and there's some dimension requirements that I did not go into, but as far as uses, those would be. It also looks like special uses would also include agricultural-based food processing. So
Okay, so,
it's more intense in the
So-
county.
okay, so it appears, yes, that there's many more uses in the county A1 than in the city A1.
And that sounds rational and logical.
Which
Okay.
is all the property that's green is
Yes.
county
Right.
A1.
Yes.
So that could exist tomorrow.
Yes.
Right,
If somebody wanted to.
surrounding it, okay. And then also, are there any limitations on the numbers and sizes of accessory buildings in our A1 Because my understanding is that if they're just going to build a residence, or if that's the primary intention, my initial question is, why rezone it?
You can have multiple principal structures in the A1 district. And I will hand it over to my colleague, Mr. Ryder, and he doesn't know that I'm handing it over to him, or Mr. Mitchell, because they are much more well-versed in accessory and principal structures. Is there anything else to add with that?
Typically, in like an R2 residential zone, those sorts of things, as you know, there's a threshold for how many accessory structures you could have. And previously, it used to be they were permitted by special exception if they exceed a certain size. Well, the new code change that we adopted a couple of years ago, you could potentially have multiple accessory structures in a normal residential zoning district. And it's all governed by the square footage of the house. Now,
Right.
with the agricultural, you could have multiple primary structures, like you could possibly have a barn and that sort of thing. But they would have to meet all the district setbacks for a principal structure.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there additional questions of staff at this time? All right, then hearing none, I know we have both the applicant as well as members of the public who wish to speak on this item, so I'm going to ask if anybody wishes to speak, if we would just come forward one at a time with a reminder, when you do step forward, please state your name and address into the record, and if we could try to limit the comments to 3 minutes apiece, that would be helpful. And if somebody says something and you really just agree, if you want to step up and just give your name and address and say ditto, I agree, you do not need to restate it all unless you have something unique to add, please.
Madam Chairman, before we continue, our audiovisual tech has asked that the commissioners please move up to the microphone when you speak, because it's not picking everyone up, so just be sure that you're right there with it, okay?
Thank you for that reminder.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, who would like to speak on this item? Oh, come on, y'all all raised your hands when I polled you.
Turn bashful.
Please, step forward.
My name is Fayne Stacy, that's F-A-Y-N-E. The last surname is S-T-A-C-Y. I live at 1 Clark's Court, which is the first residence on the Strawberry Field as you enter from Claude Simmons, first house on the right. I did attend the neighborhood meeting last night. I did receive the postcard of notice from from your staff, because I'm within 200 feet of the property that is being requested for rezoning to agriculture. I wish to place an opposition to the rezoning, and the reason I'm doing that is basically threefold. The first reason, I think it's fair to say that I was the gentleman or the person last night who raised the issue about the possible noxious effects of agriculture, and that's true. There could be odors, there could be noise, there could be livestock, there could be any number of things that would be associated with a farming operation that, in my opinion, would be detrimental to residential area. This is an established residential area. My home is 16 years old. I've lived in it for 5. I am retired. I retired to Johnson City because my wife and I love it here. She's a graduate of East Tennessee State. I am not, but we love it here. We want our retirement to be quiet and peaceful, but not to affect negatively anybody else. So there are the issues of a farming operation. I understand Dr. Sturgill said that his farming operation would be very minimal. I think he last night mentioned 4 horses. Well, that's fine. But if you rezone it to agriculture, it could be a working farm. The second reason that I am here is I directly asked Dr. Sturgill at the neighborhood meeting last night if he was aware that the property is currently zoned residential. He said yes. I understand that it was annexed recently by the city, and that he sought to have that annexation process overturned and was unsuccessful in doing that. So it appears to me, without knowing his motivations, and I have no reason to ascribe any negative intent to Dr. Sturgill or his family. I don't know the doctor. He does. As far as I know, he doesn't know me. But it seems to me like that's a kind of an end run to get what you want. That, I didn't get the annexation, so I'll seek to have it sought for agricultural. I don't know your taxing procedures here in Johnson City and Washington. I'm still a relatively new resident, but I would assume that the taxing process would be significantly less for agricultural property than it is for residential. I'm making that assumption. I may be wrong, but I think that's probably a reasonable assumption. The third reason that I am in opposition is simply the issue of fairness. It appears to me that Dr. Sturgill wants preferential treatment. He said he wants to build a 14,000 square foot home. It's obviously going to be beautiful and very expensive, and I'm sure it will be a wonder. But then to have that as well as having the property, the rest of the property, or the majority of the property zoned for agriculture seems to me having it both ways. So it's the issue of fairness. The area is clearly, in my opinion, predominantly residential. You made the decision in your commission, and when you rezoned it for residential, that was what you wanted it to be. I think you should stand on that decision, and I think Dr. Sturgill and his heirs and successors should also abide by that legal and effective decision that you previously made. I'm asking you to stand on your decision, to stand by what you did before, which for all the reasons that you did before, I don't think they've significantly changed. And this is a residential area. Our country is based on equal treatment before the laws. And regardless of your degree of education, your standing in the community, or your net worth, you should be responsible for being treated. You should be treated the same as everyone else in this area. Once again, I have no animosity whatever to Dr. Sturgill or his family or his wife or anyone about their situation. But I think if they are moving into our community, they should accept and live by the rules that all the rest of us live by. I thank you for the opportunity to express my views.
Thank you, Mr. Stacy. We appreciate the comments. All right. Is there someone else who'd like to speak?
Jeremiah Sturgill and 519 Claude Simmons, Johnson City. So we're the homeowners, landowners of this parcel. And just to I'll first address some of Mr. Stacy's concerns. As you all know, there's actually not a tax difference between A1 and R2, so we're not seeking this for tax differences. And this is just a unique situation. This land was annexed and rezoned with the intent for it to become a subdivision and for it to have a road that actually connected it to Indian Springs. That was all the plan. And then COVID happened. No one bought any of the parcels. Us, like everyone else, decided that it was a good time to build, a house during COVID and found land. And so we bought this land, and we're under the impression of, because it's going to stay as a working farm, it would actually be pretty easy to de-annex and pretty easy to go back to agriculture. That's what we get for listening to our realtors. But we have since obviously been kind of fighting that process, because when you look at this in, contradiction to Mr. Stacy, to me it is obviously we are at that border of residential and agricultural. And our land is, approximately 70 cumulative acres now. And to me, that is just logical sense that this is an agricultural piece of land, because even the act of me mowing this and turning it into hay is an agricultural act. That's not really and, selling the rolled hay. That would be something I couldn't do under residential. So, unless I just want to get a community of people to come help me with a lawnmower, there's no way that this is ever going to be like a well-kept piece of land. And, our intent, because I know you all have a hard job of not only making sure Johnson City looks good today, but that it looks good 50 years from now, 100 years from now, and that requires a ton of foresight. And I always think, I've always admired when you drive through the cities of, Brentwood or Richmond or, those older towns, and all of a sudden you're going through and it's, residential neighborhood, just, huge urban sprawl. And then all of a sudden you're just awestruck by this one area that just didn't get touched. There's suddenly 60 acres and a old home on it. Or, you're just driving through and all of a sudden there's green space. And everyone appreciates that because no matter what we build as man, God made it more beautiful to start. And so our intent is we want this land to be one of those spaces in Johnson City. We're building a home on it, and we're planning on having a farm. We're planning on that being a family farm where, I don't have the time to have, agricultural side business. It's just we would like to have the ability to have a couple horses to help eat some of the 70 acres of hay. And we've already invested $30,000 just cleaning it up because we want it to look good. We want this to be, something that would be comparable to a Grace Meadows farm, that when people drive by, they're like, I'm proud that that's in Johnson City. My wife and I, we are invested in this community. We're small business owners in this community, and we see this as a way to contribute to the community, that we're giving something back that is there, for the neighbors of Alexander's Grove and Strawberry Field to look at and admire and be like, I get to look at a park, but I don't have to pay to upkeep it. That's our intent, is that this is something that is certainly desirable for the community. And then just the last point to make is, I know there's some concerns of what all you can do under agricultural. And so, a person last night just asked us kind of the size of home and what we're building. And my response to that was just, what we're doing with it. Obviously, we wouldn't want to ruin what we're creating by having some, obnoxious farm that we're having to live on. And then into that same point, no one who is going to purchase it from us if or when we sell would do that as well, because of, the fact it is also in the city. It's unique that it would be agriculture within the city. There's no other tract of 70 acres that's in the city. So obviously we're going to have to maintain, the city ordinances as well. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Hi, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name's Brad Graham. I live at 206 Strawberry Field Drive. First, I'd like everyone to know that I do not know Dr. Sturgill. We're pretty much the same age. First met him last night at the neighborhood meeting. I am a homeowner in Strawberry Field across the way. I was born in Johnson City, and I've moved around the country. I've lived in 14 states in 2 different countries. I served in the Navy, and I can tell you that Northeast Tennessee is hands down the most gorgeous place to live in. My home office looks directly at the property in question. I've owned and worked on cattle ranches in New Mexico, and I can understand exactly what Dr. Sturgill is requesting. As a busy professional, I can assure you he doesn't have time to run a ranch. He's already made significant improvements to the property, beautification, and based on his statements last night, he intends to make more contributions along the roadway as well on Claude Simmons. He will continue to maintain the natural beauty of the surrounding area. If Dr. Sturgill uses this as he's described last night in the meeting, I would request that the commissioners appropriately zone this as agriculture. He would not be appropriately allowed to put cattle and horses on this if it were zoned any other way. The land was only recently rezoned and annexed for the explicit purposes of a development that failed to occur. This places the property back into the zoning that is no different than the 3 surrounding sides. In my opinion, the purchase of the land at a future date is going to be cost prohibitive for anyone to do any kind of commercial agricultural purposes beyond, somewhat of a hobby farm or hobby farming that Dr. Sturgill is intending to do. And as well as Ms. Hodges pointed out, the adjoining properties at any point could become a commercial agricultural farm. So noxious fumes could be just 500 down. So I don't see any problem with this. So as a homeowner in the area, I request that you vote to rezone this to agricultural for Dr. Sturgill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this agenda item? Last chance. Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and I will open it up for discussion amongst commissioners or additional questions of staff or anyone else.
I would like to make a comment that was made earlier about preferential treatment. Dr. Sturgill, I know you've been through, I don't know how many hours you've probably spent with city staff, but you have been through the process by which we make these kind of considerations and not going around it whatsoever. And I am sure that you've probably bitten your fingernails off a lot with the hoops you've had to jump through. So I just want to make that statement that, you know, this is exactly the way we analyze any request that comes in of this kind of nature. And it's before the correct board right now, then it will go to the city commission if it passes here, and that's just the steps. There are no other steps.
I have a question of staff, too. Before I begin any deliberation, I do have a professional relationship, and that Dr. Sturgill treats my children. Do I need to recuse myself from discussion here? Okay, just making sure.
You were personally benefiting from this transaction.
Okay, thank you. All right, other questions? Woody?
Dr. Sturgill, I hope you're not going to have any screaming peacocks. I have a couple of them across the river from me that basically drive me crazy. I may have to resort to violence to get rid of them, but that's one of the negative things of the farming. Sometimes the donkeys don't bother me so much, but the peacocks are pretty bad. So be aware of that. That really drives neighbors crazy.
Ms. Hodges, or perhaps Dr. Sturgill, could answer this question. What is the applicant proposing to do on this property that he could not do with the current zoning? Why does it need to be rezoned A1?
Because if they want to have any type of horse
To have a-
or.
okay.
Yes. I think they could continue to hay it because it has been hayed. And that would be considered a non-conforming use,
Okay.
actually.
But it makes sense if you have a 70-acre
Yes.
property that you would want a horse or two.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
could I make a motion?
certainly.
I'd like to make a motion to approve of the rezoning of the property of A1 as presented by the staff.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the rezoning as presented by staff. Is there any additional discussion on the motion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Brock,
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cooper,
Yes.
and Chairwoman Wild.
Yes,
Motion approved.
thank you.
Madam Chair, for the benefit of the public who's here.
Yes.
Whitney, could you share with when this would go to the city commission for first
Oh,
reading? I
please.
believe it's the first meeting in July.
Yes, it will go, that's the first reading will be July, the public input will be July 15th. And if all moves as it should, or as it normally does, August 5th.
Okay, thank you. So again, those who do wish to speak, this is not your last opportunity. We are an advisory board to the city commission, and so Commissioner Brock also serves on the city commission. She will be able to explain any discussion that went on here, and this is our recommendation, but this will go through additional hearings at the city commission level. So that is another opportunity for you to speak again. Gather your friends, everybody else who wants to come and speak. And we do thank all of you who took the time to come and express opinions. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our second item of new business. And those of you who are here, you're more than welcome to stay, but if you don't want to sit through the rest of our meeting, please feel free to leave. I'd just ask if you were going to speak or something to get out of the way so that we don't hear it on the microphones. Okay. All right, moving on, our next item is now going to be the concept plan amendment, the request to approve an amendment to the 2011 Stone Gables Planned Unit Development Concept Plan. And we may need to pull that door if they're going to be talking in the lobby. Okay, thank you. All right.
If you would allow, I'm going to present both items, which I guess is now 6.2 and 6.3, together, the concept plan amendment and the preliminary plat.
Makes
It's all the
sense.
same thing. You just need to take two motions.
Okay.
Or two actions, if you would, please. So allow me to open up this little presentation here. This is a little complicated. Well, the request is actually quite simple, but it has been complicated over the last several months because of the confusion and the frustration expressed by the surrounding neighbors. And so I'll give you some of that history. They're not here tonight. I've received phone calls and I've texted with their, what I'll call neighborhood leader. It was Dr. Mark Cooper, actually, who I believe Commissioner Brock knows.
Yes.
Who was the one who brought forward a request by the City Commission to initiate a rezoning of this site. City Commission ultimately decided that it was not appropriate to initiate that rezoning. But we have met multiple times with the neighborhoods, with the surrounding neighborhood on this request. In fact, we have had, I believe, three neighborhood meetings on this, and this goes back to last fall. So I'll go through this little presentation here. This is the site here. It's roughly a 4.5 acre tract of land on the corner of Blakemore Circle. This is Blakemore Circle right here, and this is Mayfield Drive. And I'll show you a blown out map. You'll be able to see it in relation to the rest of the city. It's over on the western side of town, just west of State of Franklin. It's actually just about due west from the Kroger off of State of Franklin. And but Mayfield Drive, if you were to travel eastward in this direction, you run into Carter Sells Road. Give you an idea of what we're talking about. The area around it is zoned R2. There are a variety of other little pieces of property that are zoned RP, and this particular 4.5 acre tract of land is RP3. The request is to amend a concept plan that was approved as part of a rezoning back in 2011. And so that's important to remember as we kind of go through this conversation. The development itself, the concept, the density, the development type, all of those things are not on the table. What is only being requested today is the concept plan amendment, which is to amend how the driveways enter onto the street. That's it, and I'll show you a more detailed image of that. And then the other is a preliminary plat amendment or a preliminary plat approval which includes two requests to vary your subdivision regulations. Originally, this was all one tract of land, and you'll see there was the single-family house here. When Mr. Myers purchased the property, he subsequently subdivided it into 4 tracts. So the single-family home gained its own tract of land. You may have seen on the previous slide that the driveway originally came out to Mayfield Drive. As part of this plan, the driveway that will access the single-family home will come off of Blakemore Circle right here via a shared access drive. And so this is a new lot. This is a new lot. And there's actually another one over here. So there are a total of 4 tracts that were created in or shortly after his rezoning in 2011. The property, going back even before the rezoning, the property was annexed in 1988 as part of the Carter Sells Edition annexation. R2 was applied. In 2011, when Mr. Myers came forward, He asked for the site to be rezoned from R2 to RP3 to allow for the 22-unit duplex-style development, PUD development, plan unit development, that you have here on the center of the screen. At the time, the plan proposed, and you can see it here, 5 shared driveways entering onto Mayfield Drive, and then 3 shared driveways entering onto Blakemore Circle, along with the interior private access easement. You may note that 2011 came and went, and he, for whatever reason, and it's never our business exactly why someone chooses not to pull the trigger when they do, nothing happened immediately after the rezoning. About 3 years later, in 2014, he approached the city with a preliminary set of construction drawings, and that's just the horizontal civil set, looking to get preliminary approval of the construction set that met the concept plan that he had previously gotten approval for. In 2014, when he submitted those plans, engineering at the time said, Mr. Myers, the shared driveways are not going to work. That's not meeting our standard, and so we need to come up with another way to egress these vehicles out onto the streets without using the shared driveways.
Mr. Mitchell, when you talk about shared driveway, it's just for the 2 residents who live in that duplex.
Right.
It's their driveway. It's not
Correct.
with any other
Correct. Yes,
physical
ma'am.
building.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Good question, though. And so engineering, they submitted a revision to his concept plan saying, this is how we really need you to address the driveways. And you'll see here in the 2011 plan, the units, they're duplex units again. If a car was parked right here, a car would back out and then back out this way. Same thing if its neighbor was parked right here, would back out, and there was this shared entry point right here.
But not back out onto the main street.
But not back out onto the main street, correct. But this shared entry point, for whatever reason in 2014, I wasn't here at the time, former city engineer Alan Cantrell shared all this with me, that did not meet the standard. And so what was requested is that the driveways be modified, still having a backup, an interior backup, not backing out onto the street, but modified it such that the interior backup came like this, and then you exited out your own individual driveway. So can you see the difference between the two? This is the shared concept in 2011, and then this is where each unit gets its own individual driveway. So normally, this kind of insignificant change would not generate a change that would need to come before the Planning Commission or the City Commission. But because our concept plan provisions in the zoning code indicate that any change to ingress and egress to and from the site triggers a concept plan amendment, that's why we're here. So concept plan amendments also require that we notify the neighbors within 200 feet. And so we did that, and going back to the first neighborhood meeting last fall. There were a very large number of, and actually at the time, it was a combo Zoom meeting and in person. So we had a number of people on Zoom and then a number of people here in the audience. And there was just a tremendous amount of confusion about why this development was happening, how did it get approved. And so staff went through the process of explaining that, yes, it has been 9 years, at the time it was, 9 years since it was approved, but that the development itself was not on the table. So I'm sharing this with you because you may hear about this between now and June 17th. You may have already heard about this from some constituents or from some concerned neighbors. I just feel it's our responsibility, staff's responsibility, to share with you what we've been doing the last 6 months with this particular application. And so, again, the development itself is not on the table. What is a request to revise the driveway connections from shared to individual. And then you can see here there's a very simple rotation of this one duplex unit that in 2011 was proposed to come out onto Blakemore Circle, and now will actually address the internal private drive or private access easement. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you for any questions and then open it up for comments.
So from a, oh, excuse me.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So from a safety, sideline traffic issue, it's actually a better arrangement. Is
It
that
is.
true?
According to engineering, it is,
Than what was approved back
yes.
in 2011?
Right. When they came forward in 2014, 2015, sat down with engineering staff, said, how does this look? Can I go forward? You know, because in order to do a full construction set's a big chunk of change. And so I want to get some direction on what I can do before I go and have my full civil set drawn. And at the time, that was when Mr. Cantrell said, we've really got to address these driveways. And so what you see on the screen is what was approved by city engineering in 2015 and then reapproved by city engineering in 2020.
Preston, can you speak to the last two bullet points, questioning the reducing the minimum access easements and the internal pedestrian pathways?
That'll be part of the subdivision motion.
Okay, I thought you said you're doing them together, presenting them together.
Well, I am presenting them together, and so sure, I'll be glad to go to that. So I'll just zoom in on it
Keep
here.
saying, move it on.
Sure. No, that's okay. That's okay. This little internal private access drive, you'll see here, accesses, as I noted in the beginning of the presentation, the original single-family home, as well as 2, 4, 6, 8 units on the inside here. It's roughly only about 180 feet long, and so it will look almost like an alley, like an urban alley. And so what they're proposing is that it be modified from 40 feet down to 30, and that's really due to physical constraints that you have here with fitting everything in, and as well as removing the pedestrian access aisle or access way that is traditionally required as part of any private access easement. Staff is in support of those requests because, again, it's roughly only 180 feet long. It's going to look and feel like a driveway or a private alley.
No concerns from the fire department?
No, actually, there was extensive review with the fire department, and this turnaround you see here, this striped turnaround, is where their apparatus
So there's
will
extensions on that?
make
right
that
there.
correct.
Got a T.
Correct. But
Is there,
they did approve it.
Good.
Yes.
is there any future implications for the remaining piece of that property? Well, that's a separate plat right now, the existing residence.
The existing.
So if they wanted to develop that sometime in the future and add more duplexes back there, what would be the implications for this quotation marks alley?
Really no implications for this, for the private access easement. It would just be another amendment to the concept plan. Plus, they'd have to ensure that they meet zoning.
But the construction of the street and all that's, suits us.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Does removal of the internal pedestrian path affect the green space requirement in any way?
It doesn't. It doesn't. And for this type of private access easement, it would typically have been a striped area. It would not have been a formal 5-foot concrete sidewalk. It would have just been a pedestrian way that might have been striped in or a part of the private access easement. That's why it's, from our perspective, it's less of a concern. You're not granting a variance to a conventional or a traditional 5-foot concrete sidewalk.
I have a couple of questions, Preston. Do you know what the traffic count is on Mayfield? Do we have any data on that?
I don't. I would be happy to pull
Is it a
that.
heavily traveled road? I'm not familiar.
It is a fairly heavily traveled road. Going back to information that I received not only anecdotally from the neighbors during those neighborhood meetings, but also from reading minutes and staff notes back in 2011, as part of that debate, both at the Planning Commission and City Commission, traffic concerns on Mayfield were raised, and Public Works had agreed to further study the area and possibly provide traffic calming devices, whether that's horizontal or vertical. That's up to engineering and public works. But then when Mr. Mayfield didn't pull the trigger on the development, there was no linkage there, and so the study was not done. However, I have reached out to Mr. Penzola, Public Works Director, and asked if that study could be picked back up, and he said absolutely it could be picked back up if the community so chose or desired, and reached out to Public Works or to engineering, that we could restudy the area.
And the other item I have is, again, we've got buildings relatively close to each other, and I hope that these get processed through the building department.
Oh, absolutely.
With the,
They have to meet minimum building separation of 10
building
feet.
separation.
Right, right,
Otherwise get to 1 hour rated walls and stuff. Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Yes, sir. No, all of this would still have to, if approved, he still would have to submit his construction set for civil design. And then, if and when that gets approved, do all of his infrastructure improvements, and then he would come in for all of his vertical.
Okay.
Additional questions of staff at this time? All right, then I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to speak for or against this agenda item? And we've kind of combined the two agenda items, so we're talking about both the concept plan amendment as well as a preliminary plat for Stone Gables planned unit development. All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing, and I'll open it for discussion amongst commissioners and/or a motion. And Mr. Mitchell, would you please remind us, because it is two separate items, we do need to make two separate motions. Are there any particular amendments or anything we need to put in the motions to satisfy?
No, ma'am. You would just simply, if you chose to support, you would just move in to approve as presented.
Presented, okay.
Right.
Thank
And I guess the only important little note there is that we would want you to act on the concept plan amendment first.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mitchell, remind me what the concerns were of the neighbors, surrounding neighbors. It's been a while since we've
Right.
had this brought to us, so.
The primarily was the intensity of the development, was the zoning district itself and the intensity of the development, the total number of units.
And the total acreage is what?
About 4.5,
Okay, and how many units then would be,
22.
but that meets our code?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
They did also add other comments related to stormwater, about flooding and downstream flooding, concerns for downstream properties. Staff tried to do everything we could to alleviate those concerns. We certainly understand anytime we're in that neighborhood meeting and we're addressing folks who are clearly upset about something, it's hard to just hear hard data. No one likes to hear hard data, facts. And so we try to address it as delicately as possible. But we have very stringent engineering design standards that they have to meet from a stormwater perspective. And so we just try to reiterate that before any permits can be pulled, he's going to have to meet all of those stringent stormwater requirements. Same thing with traffic. Mayfield is a collector, and so it is intended to carry more vehicles than a local road anyway. But again, the concerns that were raised in 2011, if and when another modern study needs to be done, then, like I said, Mr. Penzola's open to that. We just need to have the community reach out, and I think it was also dependent on when the trigger was going to be pulled on this particular development.
Additional discussion. I'm looking for a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the concept plan amendments as presented.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the concept plan amendment approval as presented by staff. Is there additional discussion? Nicole, please call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cooper?
Yes.
Chairwoman White?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the preliminary plat as presented.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the preliminary plat. Is there any additional discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cooper?
Yes.
Chairwoman White?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay. Moving on to what is now Agenda Item 6.4. This is rezoning number 1075 at 207 East Mountcastle Drive.
This rezoning request is located at Mountcastle Drive and Broyles Drive. What the applicant and owner would like to do is rezone their particular property from this B4 that it currently is, where there is a hotel there, it's the Econo Lodge, and to change uses to from a transient kind of, or hotel use, to continue a residential use as RO, which is a high-density residential, to 64 one-bedroom units. All the changes would occur internally. There's not going to be any like footprint changes. Just to show you what the concept plan is, the RO density allows for 35 units an acre. The proposed density is about 22 units an acre. One thing to note is that staff has asked for a couple of concept plan or some adjustments just to be shown as it goes forward that have not been submitted yet. One is to state that it is one-bedroom apartments because that way it meets the parking requirements with the existing parking lot. The other is to provide sidewalk along Broyles. I'm going to be very honest, it's a very hard word for me, Broyles Drive. You'll notice that there isn't sidewalk here, and I forgot to put a yellow line here. But there's some here. But there needs to be sidewalk to be added to this proposal. Just a picture I took of where it could go. One of the interesting things about this request is an adaptive reuse. So this, I was once told this concept of horizontal mixed use, and this is what that would be. Instead of vertical, it would be horizontal. And so I put together like all the things that are in this one block that someone who lived there could walk to and take a trip off our roadways. And we have the current land use of commercial and the future land use of commercial. I think that's kind of how we had thought that this would go. Just some pictures, just in case you have not seen the Econo Lodge anytime recently. There was a neighborhood meeting held on June 2nd, and there was no public in attendance. And that staff recommends approval with the conditions that I mentioned about including the sidewalk on the concept plan and just stating that it's one-bedroom apartments. This is supported by both the bridge plan and the strategic plan. In the bridge plan, it encourages infill development, and this would be great infill development. It also supports multifamily development where appropriate. And when you have these uses that are where you can walk to something, I think that when we can take one trip out of a day, that's a pretty remarkable thing. The strategic plan also encourages a mix of housing options in the quality of place. And so I want to also highlight that. And then you have your decision options. But if you have any questions, both for staff or the applicant or owner. I believe everybody is here. Let me go back to the map. I like maps. Let's go with this map. Busy map.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hodges. Are there questions of staff at the moment?
I do. You have to come back up. So improvements to this site would just strictly be internal? Would there be any kind of external improvements to the?
I think that's a better
Structure.
question for the applicant.
Okay.
Because at this time, for a concept plan, we don't need to know all of those details. I would imagine that there will be some outside like facade, but I can't speak, I wouldn't know the true answer to that, but I'm going to assume so.
I'll ask my other questions
Okay.
to the applicant then.
Additional questions of staff? Okay. All right, then I'd like to go ahead and open up a public hearing, if anybody wishes to speak.
I'm Philip Cox, live at 145 Whispering Lake Drive. I'm the applicant. Love to answer any questions. Jenny, I can go ahead and answer your question. We plan to paint and patch the stucco with a new exterior color scheme, remove half the exterior doors. There's 128 units. We're going to convert it to 64 units, so we're removing half the doors. New exterior lighting, accent stone around the columns to kind of add some pop to the area, and seal and stripe the parking lot. Those are the kind of the primary things we're going to look at to do to it. The main purpose of the project really is, we think it's a great location. I think everybody would agree with that as far as the walkability and everything. We are full at the project we did on Mockingbird, and there's more demand for multifamily. We think this is a great repurpose. Allows us to take an existing hotel that's got a lot of age on it, and put a new use to the community, and we think it'll be a great project for the community.
So this is not extended stay?
No,
It will be
it is
permanent
not.
residence?
Yeah, this is a true
rentals.
apartment complex, so we're
Okay.
double baying the units. They'll be probably around 550 to 600 square feet, and it'll be a true apartment complex. We will provide all utilities paid, though, because of the infrastructure with having the, you can't sub-meter something like this, but it will be a true apartment complex.
You said there are how many units now, and they're going
There's 128 units now. We'll just cut that in half to 64
to
units.
64, okay.
Yeah.
What is your control mechanism in terms of people staying there? You're going to have staff on site? I mean, it may not be any of my business, but I'm just concerned about how this community is going to live.
Yeah, I get the concern. I mean, I think a lot of people are like, oh, is this going to be a low-income housing project? And that is not our intent at all. We're going to be charging more rent than what we charge at Mockingbird, mainly because all the utilities are paid. I mean, this is a pretty primo location, so the intent is to get like high-end customers, is not to
It's a
get
good use of it. I'm just concerned
low-end
about
customers.
control.
Yeah, I mean, this is a management issue that you're asking a management question, and to be honest, like, we have partnerships with other management companies that we can work with to manage it, but we're more concerned about just getting it built for now, but we have resources to be able to manage it, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? All right, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and again open for discussion amongst commissioners and/or a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'll go ahead and get a motion on the floor, and then we can have discussion. It's great to see this being repurposed. It's in for those of us who grew up in Johnson City, that was the first outside of downtown development in that area. It was an old Kmart at that time. And it's remained a vibrant part of the community. So I will make a motion for approval of, let me get it correct here. the rezoning for 207 East Mountcastle Drive.
I second it.
Do we need to add in with
With the conditions.
sidewalk, with the conditions of the sidewalk?
With the conditions of the sidewalk.
And
Yes, we do. We'll make sure we get those in there.
does it also need to include the one-bedroom?
And also stipulate that it'll be one bedroom.
And stipulate that it'll be one bedroom.
Yeah.
I should have had somebody else do
We
this.
gotta put it on, gotta get it on.
Did we get it in the call?
new to this?
No, I'm just getting old in my mind. It doesn't work as quick anymore.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there additional discussion? Hearing none, Nicole, please call the roll.
My microphone has died, so I have to be loud. Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cooper?
Yes.
Chairwoman White?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, our next item under new business is item 6.5. This is rezoning number 1074 at 203 Mayflower Road.
Great. This rezoning site is currently zoned R2, and it is 1.9 acres, and I would want to start with that because that will matter in a minute. And what they would like to do is go from R2 to R2C. And this is a kind of basic concept plan of how those lots would lie out. One of the reasons that they would like to go this route, it's a handy dandy table of what the difference is between
That's what I like.
R2 to R2C, and I now know I need to move that over a little bit. And they can do, mathematically, individually, you could meet all the requirements for the lots and still be 5 units, but design-wise, it makes it a little bit hard. They'd like to keep the existing house. Now, that existing house does front Mayflower, so they'll have to treat it somehow so that it now is fronting some potentially backyards. But this is kind of in general how they would like to do it. I believe that this lot, their driveway would need to come out to Rocky Top Road. But that is something that this is just the concept plan. This will also have to come back for a preliminary plat. So you will see this again. They just wanted to go ahead and start this process before doing the engineering with it. But that's essentially some of the difference between why they really would like some lot flexibility, so to be able to design the lots differently. There is multifamily across the street, and I want this to go away now. This is a Latter-day Saints, the Church of Latter-day Saints. And then this is an industrial arm that comes down, but it's for the most part residential. Let me see if I got it. I apologize, I do not have a larger scope out that shows that this is kind of a residential kind of area.
Where's the
which is-
church? Point that out, if you would,
To the right.
to the,
Yeah, right there. See the
Right
big
here.
parking lot?
oh, yeah. I'm familiar with it.
So they're kind of in this like spot where you've got multifamily in front of you, and I mean, that would be the multifamily across the street, and this is the house in and of itself. Again, the current land use, future land use calls it to be residential, and then staff is in support of this. The neighborhood meeting was held. There weren't any in attendance. I have fielded several calls on this request, and it seems as though as when I explained that it's a lot about lot design, that as long as it's staying residential, and single-family residential seems to be what happens. They seem to be, well, that's, if anybody's out there that has an objection, I haven't heard that over the phone yet. So, but yes, staff recommends approval of this request.
Are there questions of staff at this time? There was some reference in the packet about during the final plat approval, the staff would have to do something with the driveways. Was that the one that you showed us?
Yes,
That
'cause-
was going to have to be reconfigured?
Yeah, I think that's gonna come up again when it comes in for preliminary plat approval.
Okay.
Or I think maybe this is final plat, process different, final plat, but it's coming back before you.
Okay. So each of those proposed lots meets the required size and everything to
Yes.
this? Okay. Are there other questions of staff at this time?
What other things could occur there at R2C if they change their mind with the 4 distinct lots? What else could they do there?
Off the top of my head, I can only think of residential uses, but I think that anything that would be allowed in the,
What's in the R2?
what's in the R2, so,
Single family.
single family only. Any, like, could you do schools or parks or, I think there's some small uses that are allowed in the residential.
Customary general farming, public utility stations, municipal county buildings. I don't think any.
Put a new city hall there.
Peacocks.
And group homes.
No horses or cattle.
No horses.
Or peacocks?
I get that into the ordinance.
Okay, other questions of staff at this time? All right, then let's go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to speak? Yay, y'all stuck around so long. I knew you had to come forward.
I won't speak too long. My name is Scott Landy. I'm the applicant. I live at 114 State Drive, and I'll do what Mrs. Hodges had to say. And I appreciate all the help you've given us. Thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any questions of the applicant? None. All right, is there anybody else who wishes to speak? No? Can't entice you? All right. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing then, and we'll open it up for either discussion amongst commissioners or a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the rezoning of properties to R2C.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the rezoning of 203 Mayflower Road from R2 to R2C. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cooper?
Yes.
Chairwoman Wild?
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right. Our last new business item is item 6.6, and this is the bond release for the cottages at Cedar Rock Phase 2.
Chairwoman Wild, Vice Chairman Cooper, board members, or commissioners, thank you. And specifically, the bond release for the walking trail at Cottages, Cedar Rock Phase 2. And October of 2019, the developer posted an $8,913 cash bond to cover incomplete work for the Phase 2 walking trail. I've got a concept plan that I can show you the trail in just a moment. In May of this year, the engineering division submitted the memorandum that you see to the left of the screen stating that all the required work is complete. So we're recommending the Regional Planning Commission release the bond to the cash bond to the developer. Just to refresh your memory, this is the walking trail that we're discussing. This development's at the corner of North Roan and Hammett Road. This is the walking trail. Been out there myself. It looks nice. This little tie-in right here, it comes out to this T where these people can easily access the walking trail. There's a couple pictures of the trail. Planning staff and engineering satisfied with how it's been constructed.
All right, thank you. Are there questions of staff at this time? All right, I don't see any public here, but does anybody wish to speak on this matter? All right, open up for discussion or a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the release of the bond.
Second.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second for the bond release at the Cottages of Cedar Rock, Phase 2. Any discussion? Nicole, please call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Cooper?
Yes.
Chairwoman White?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Right. Moving on to other. We have one item, item 7.1, Planning Commission Subcommittee reports. Nicole has distributed minutes from the prior subcommittee meetings. And what we've done is, we've met 3 times now to really discuss the format of the 2 new proposed subcommittees. We've talked about what different functions of those subcommittees might be, and I promised you all that I would be making assignments to those subcommittees at this meeting. So, unless anybody wants to really stand up and scream at me, the 2 subcommittees we proposed were strategic and long-range planning is one of them, and then legislative and land use is the second. The strategic and long-range planning subcommittee, I would like to ask Uvi, Chris, Clay, and Jamie to serve on that one, please. The legislative and land use, I'd like to ask Benjamin, Tembra, Brett, and Bob to serve on that one. And then I have left Jenny and myself as floaters between the 2 subcommittees to fill in whenever somebody is unable to attend, or to attend whenever we would like to. I didn't want to make you an assignment of a subcommittee. I thought your hands were already full, and so.
I've been called a lot of things, but not a floater, but that's, so this is new, so this is good.
Well, you're a floater now.
It's a good day.
So, it was an attempt to make 2 balanced subcommittees, so I tried to take into consideration the strengths of each individual on the commission in making those assignments. If anybody has a strong opposition to their assignment, beat me up in the parking lot.
Did I just get a double assignment by being gone?
Yes.
During the assignment?
We made you chair of both of them.
I figured that was the poor timing on my part.
That was what you volunteered
That's
for,
par for the
correct?
course.
Yes, yes. I also want to state that we did have a presentation of the bridge plan finally to the city commission. Chris attended that. He told me it went exceptionally well. I don't know if you have anything to add to it.
It is so compatible with our strategic plan. And I really like the way that, not just here on the planning commission, but our community partners, as they propose things and bring things back to the city, they refer back to these 2 documents now. So as we've all, considered these our roadmaps going to the future, they're functioning that way, and so it's great. It's really
I
good.
think it informed a couple of our decisions tonight, the bridge plan and the
Yeah.
strategic plan, and so it's nice to be able to hang on to some of those things and remember that work in the midst of, complicated decisions.
Yeah, I really appreciate staff's reference to those plans in their recommendations for items too. That really is quite helpful.
We love the tables. Those tables are just, we'll cheer about that. That's great. Thank you.
All right, is there any other business for discussion?
I was going to
tonight?
make a request. Is it possible, I know you guys are filling up these agendas kind of up to the last minute, but to give us at least a week's notice when we get the agenda before the meeting? Just a lot of places, I want to go out and try to see them if I can, and just gives us a little more time to try to do some site visits, if possible. If possible.
No, we normally try to, and in fact, I'm gonna defend Nicole. Nicole stays on us about.
Okay. Okay.
But last week being a short week because of Memorial Day, yes, so apologies that it came in, I think it came in on Wednesday. But yes, we will do our best to make 7 days.
Thank you. Yep. Great. I wasn't trying to point you out.
Oh, no, I got you.
You're not putting her out, you're putting us.
Nicole is not the problem, let me assure you.
Also, for those of you present, I'm not issuing a formal invitation yet because I don't have a date, but I do want to have a social type of get-together before anybody new rotates on our board or anybody existing may rotate off our board. I'm proposing to do it at the swimming pool in my backyard. Swimming attire is not required as long as you agree to drink as many margaritas as are provided. So look for that invitation soon. I'm trying to find a date. My child attends a year-round school that only has a 5-week summer, so I'm trying to cram everything in these 5 weeks, so it may come after the 4th of July when he goes back to school, but I do want to have a get-together for us.
Requiring swimming attire, you may not get anybody
Well,
showing
I
up.
said, no swimming attire is required, but you can throw each other in the pool if
There
you
you go,
want.
okay.
So, and that will be open to both staff and the commission, so we do appreciate that. All right, any other items? This meeting is adjourned.
Good meeting.